All right, so if you're coming from New York, New Jersey, or the Illinois area, there's probably a pretty good chance that you haven't had to pay an HOA fee in your life. But if you have, it looks nothing like what it is down here. And I hear most of the same assumptions all the time when I talk to people relocating from up north. The HOA fees are just a way for the association to take my money. It's not necessarily true, and it's not close to what it does. So today I'm going to exactly what those fees pay for, and then when a non-HOA property actually makes sense, and how to check the HOA's financial health before you even write an offer. Because in Florida, especially right now, that step matters more than. So real quick before we get right, I work with buyers who relocate to Port Charlotte, Punta Gorda, and Englewood every, and sometimes they view property in HOAs, and these questions come up every time and what it means. So if you're working through a decision like this right now, my team and I are always happy to help and try and get some of those HOA documents on any of the properties that you're looking at and walk you through what they actually mean. The link is in the description. It's no pressure. It's just the information. And by the way, don't forget to subscribe and hit like so you can get all of my. Now let's take a look at what a HOA. So what do the HOA fees actually pay for, right? So let's bust the myth out first, right? In typical single-family deed-restricted communities in Charlotte County, the HOA fee covers a very short list of specific things they do. Start with the common area maintenance. This could be anything from the landscaping along the entrances when you first pull in, the community signage, retention ponds, the community pool if there is one, or a clubhouse as well. Then you get into the reserve funding, which is the money that they put aside for things that will eventually need to be replaced. It could be a roof. If you're in a gated deed restricted community, that could be the entrance gate to get into the property, the shared irrigation system, any type of road resurfacing that needs to happen within the community. Then we get into the master insurance, which is for the structured and common areas. This does not apply to your individual home itself. Then the enforcement of the deed restrictions, right? They have to enforce the rules. This is the one that people either love or hate, right? It's what keeps the neighbor from parking a boat on blocks in their front yard, or somebody who wants to paint their house neon green. Now, on the flip side of that, what does it not cover? It's not going to cover your individual homeowner's insurance policy. It does nothing for your property taxes or anything that happens within the four walls of your own home. So to be real with you, a well-run HOA is protecting the property value by making sure everybody in the whole neighborhood is consistent on what their property and landscaping looks like. A poorly run is just one that's collecting money, doesn't have anything to show for it. So there is a different concept at HOA, but it really boils down to the management and how well they enforce the restrictions on the deed in that community. So now for those of you who are thinking about condo and townhomes, let me show you what's changed. Because obviously if you're in Florida, you probably heard about this because this was on the news in 2021. For you guys up north, maybe you heard about it once and kind of glazed over it. But we did have a condo here in Florida. It's called the Surfside that did collapse. So after that happened, the Florida laws have changed regarding condos. So when it comes to condos and the co-op buildings, if they are 3 stories or taller, they are now required to complete something that they call a structural integrity reserve study, which is SIRS for short. Plus, they have to do a periodic milestone inspection as the building starts to age. So what it does is it makes sure that the building's structural integrity and the components are actually being funded for repair, and they're not just being deferred year after year. So what does it mean for you if you plan on buying in one of these? It means that the associations can no longer vote to waive or underfund these reserves for major structural items the way they did in the past. So if the reserve study happens to show that in the next 10 years, the roof or concrete or some other structural component needs to be fixed and it requires 6 figures, that needs to be funded, which could mean monthly fees passed on to you and special assessments. So it's not really a reason to avoid condos if condos is your thing. I'm just letting you know up front, most of Charlotte County condos and townhomes, they are low rise, and this may not even apply depending on the height and the age of these properties. But it would behoove you to ask for the reserve study and some of the most recent milestone inspection reports before you get attached to and try and sign on that line. A little bit later, I'll get into telling you exactly how you should request that. So let's move on to deed restricted versus non-deed restricted, right? So what is the lifestyle difference? So these are some of the parts that might affect your day to day more than the fee itself, right? So in a deed restricted community, that means that you have rules that you have to abide by, and you have to get permission for certain things, like the color you want to paint your house. There's landscaping standards. There's rules about RVs and boats and how tall the fence could be. Like, for instance, here in Punta Gorda, we have one called Deep Creek. They're very strict on their rules. But from some of you guys that live in a tightly regulated co-op in New York or playing communities out in Jersey, this might feel right at home to you, right? It's all familiar. It's nothing new to you. You might like that. But in a non-deed restricted property, that means none of that applies. So if you wanted to paint your house purple and the driveway black, nobody can say anything to you. I know Port Charlotte, now Port Charlotte does have a very huge selection of non-deed restricted and non-HOA properties. It was largely platted and sold that way back in the 50s. So a lot of the counties simply never had an association layered on top of that. Either one, both of those options are good for the right person, right? So it depends on what you want when you want to come out here. And just make sure it's part of why you're leaving your last state. If it's that you want more freedom to do what you want with your own property, then non-HOA might not be to your benefit. But if you like knowing that your neighbor can't let their yard go and the landscaping has to be kept a certain way, then a deed restricted community will be more at home for you. Now, how can you evaluate the HOA before you buy? Now, this is a step that most of you folks from out of state skip, and it's one that protects you the most, right? Before you start getting attached to a property in an HOA or a condo association, you can request the documents either from your agent or if you have an attorney do the transaction. You can get all this information during your due diligence period to look over. Some of these things might include a log of the board meeting minutes, right? This will let you know what's going on within that community. Are there any lingering lawsuits? Are there any current disputes? Is there deferred maintenance going on? You also may want to look at the current budget, right? Your reserve study. You want to see what the reserves are and make sure they actually fund it. Shouldn't be just a line item that says reserve on it with nothing behind it. You want to check to see if they have any special assessment notices, whether they have any in the past or if there's some coming up that are pending. Remember, a community that has just levied a large special assessment or is getting ready to, it's going to hit your cost of ownership in that community. Now, for condos specifically, the milestone inspection status report and the SIRS report, if the building happens to be 3 stories or taller. You want to check out the insurance summary for the association's master policy. So none of this information that you're getting requires you to be a lawyer to look through. It's about half an hour worth of reading. You can have someone like me or the agent you're working with or the attorney to just pull it and walk you through the highlights so you know what you're getting into. What are the pros and what are the cons, and if it makes sense for you. And if you are wanting to relocate to Port Charlotte, Punta Gorda, or Englewood, here is the bottom line, right? So here's what I will say about this. Port Charlotte, you have the widest mix. There's plenty of non-deed restricted inventory if you want zero HOA. And alongside, there is established deed restricted communities here if you're looking for that structure. So in Punta Gorda, especially Punta Gorda Isles, which you'll hear referred to as PGI, and the deed restricted waterfront sections, they are very heavily HOA and more times they are gated. It has tighter architectural standards. Both, right? Englewood happens to sit in between, a mix of older non-restricted neighborhoods and newer deed-restricted developments as you get closer to the coast. So none of these are better than the other. It's about matching the property to how you actually want to live when you come out here. And you got to know what you're walking into financially. So if you're narrowing in on the Southwest Florida and you're trying to figure out whether an HOA community fits your lifestyle, that's the exact type of conversation that me and my team have with relocation buyers every week. We can get those documents on HOA properties that you're looking at so that there's no guessing or assumptions on your part. And we can walk you through what you're really getting into. The link is in the description to book a call along with my number or my email if you prefer to reach out directly. And if you found this useful, please remember to subscribe and like. The neighborhood breakdown video for Punta Gorda and Port Charlotte is linked right here. So that's the natural next step if you've already considering Charlotte County. It makes the most sense for you. As always, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.